Yo, what's up guys? It's Noah here, and in today's video, we're going to be breaking down the Week 15 main slate on Draftkings and Yahoo. Going to do a position-by-position breakdown of this week's main slate. This is not my only video for the week. I do have a lot of additional content already out on the channel. If you're watching this video on Friday morning when I post it, in case you didn't know, there are 2 games on Saturday. There is a 2-game slate on Saturday. There's some big tournaments on DK as well for that 2-game slate. So I do have a video already up on the channel for Saturday's games. If you are planning to play the 2-game slate on Saturday, be sure to check that video out after you watch this one. But for this video, we'll go position by position, break down the main slate, quarterback through tight end. I'll hit on the few guys that I'm really keying in on as the week's gone on. The guys that I really like at each position. 3-4 guys that I really feel like I'm going to have the most exposure to at quarterback through tight end. But before we do get started with the video, guys, as always, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button down below. If you are new to the channel here, be sure to click the subscribe button as well. I do upload a lot of NFL content to this YouTube channel. I will be making NBA content as well daily once NBA season gets here in about a week. So be sure to hit that subscribe button, click the notification bell so that way you never miss out on any of my new videos. And if you do really enjoy my videos, if they help you out a lot, you want to get more content from me, you want to see more that I have to offer, I do have a Patreon link down below in the description. You can check out the Patreon, see all the additional content that I do have to offer over there if that is something that interests you. But let's go ahead and take a look at this week's main slate and start off at quarterback. So quarterback this week, I think at the top, talking about the guys like 7K and above, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray. My 2 favorite guys at the top are definitely Mahomes and Jackson. Patrick Mahomes, he's just been so good this season, been so consistent. I said it last week. I know Mahomes didn't have the best game last week, but I would say last week's game for Mahomes was kind of a floor game for him. He threw 3 interceptions, which is something we don't really see from him. He still had 393 yards and 2 touchdowns, but the 3 picks, definitely something we don't really see from Mahomes. Still managed to get 24 Draftkings points last week against the Dolphins, and, that was kind of a bad game for Mahomes. His floor is just so high right now. We know the ceiling is there as well. I like this spot against the Saints. I know the Saints have been really good defensively this season. They do have a really good defense overall. But, this game's being played in the Superdome. It has one of the highest totals on the slate at 51.5. Also a pretty close spread, a 3-point spread right now favoring the Chiefs. This game has the makings to be a shootout if the Saints can put up points. I like Patrick Mahomes a lot. I think if I'm paying up at quarterbacks, he's probably one of my favorite guys to go to at 7,900. And then Lamar Jackson I have a lot of interest in as well. Pretty much since coming back from COVID, Lamar has been really good. Last 2 games against Dallas and Cleveland, 26 and 37 Draftkings points. He's been running a ton as well, 94 rushing yards, 124 rushing yards in his last 2 games. Look, he's looked like his old self. He's not going out there and throwing a ton, but the rushing upside, that's why you look to roster Lamar Jackson. You don't roster Lamar because you're hoping he throws for 3 touchdowns. You're rostering him because he can run for 100 yards and multiple touchdowns. The rushing upside is what makes him so viable and valuable for fantasy. And we've seen that the last 2 games. The rushing upside's kind of been back. It kind of went, away during the middle part of the season. We had games where Lamar wasn't running much. He was only getting about 40, 50 rushing yards at most. Now, last 2 games, 94, 124 rushing yards, has 3 rushing touchdowns his last 2 games. Gets a really good spot this week at home against the Jaguars, a team that, I really haven't shied away from picking on defensively. The Jaguars probably have one of the worst defenses in the league overall. Really good spot for Lamar. I think I probably prefer Patrick Mahomes because I think that game is more likely to stay close. I think that game is more likely to be, a shootout as well. I do have concerns that maybe Jacksonville can't put up points here against Baltimore, and we just see Baltimore get out to an early lead and they just run the ball a ton. Obviously if they're running the ball, they'll involve Lamar in the run game as well, but maybe that caps his ceiling a little bit. So between Lamar and Mahomes, I think I'd give the slight edge to Mahomes. But if I am paying up, those are my 2 preferred options at the top. In the mid-range, there's not a ton that really stands out here. I think Taysom Hill is interesting on the other side of that KC game. Assuming Drew Brees does not play, I am recording this video on Wednesday night, a little bit earlier than I normally record my videos for the main slate. Normally record them on Thursday. Recording this video on Wednesday because I do have to do some traveling this week and I'm not going to be able to record on Thursday. As of now, it doesn't look like Drew Brees is going to play this week. This will be something we have to monitor heading up to Sunday, but assuming that Drew Brees remains out and Taysom Hill starts again, in the 4 games that Taysom Hill has started, he's been pretty good. 25, 18, 24, 20 Draftkings points. We know this is a guy that has rushing upside, a ton of rushing upside. And the passing, the passing's been great the last few games, especially last game against Philly. He nearly threw for 300 yards, had 2 passing touchdowns, still had 33 rushing yards. Had that game against Atlanta where he had 83 rushing yards. Like, this is a guy that can throw for 200, 250 yards, multiple touchdowns, can add 50, 60 rushing yards. We know when they get down near the goal line, like, Taysom Hill is always a threat to punch it in himself. Always has that potential to get multiple rushing touchdowns. He definitely has upside here in a game against the Chiefs where the Saints are probably going to be forced to throw. Taysom Hill's probably going to be forced to throw 35 to 40 times again. And if that's the case, he's got upside, and at 6K, he is a guy that I do have interest in the mid-range. So I like him in that 6K range. But if we're looking for value, if we're trying to go cheap, looking below 6K, I talked about him last week, and I like him once again this week. Jalen Hurts, $5,900 on DK. Still pretty cheap on Yahoo as well, coming in at $27 over there. One of the reasons I liked Hurts so much last week was because of his rushing upside, and we saw that, come to fruition even in his first career start. Had 18 rushing attempts for 106 yards, also had 167 passing yards and 1 passing touchdown. Like, he only threw for 167 yards and 1 touchdown, and he still managed to score 23 Draftkings points because of the rushing upside. Like, Hurts, he's kind of like a Taysom Hill to me. He doesn't really have to throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns to hit his ceiling. He can do so much through the ground. They called a ton of design run plays for him. Like, he is definitely a threat to, rush for 100 yards any week. I like Jalen Hurts a lot. Better matchup this week against the Cardinals rather than facing the Saints. I think this game has some shootout potential. Right now, the total, I think, is like in the 40s. Yeah, it's 48.5 right now. Been bet up since from when it opened at 47.5. Like, this game does have some shootout potential if the Eagles can put up enough points. I like this game a lot to go over that 48.5 total. I like a lot of guys on both sides here. Jalen Hurts, I liked him last week, and I'm going to be right back on him this week. I know the price tag went up, but the rushing upside that he brings just makes him, kind of like an auto play as long as he's not too expensive. And that's not the case right now with him still being just $5,900 now. If he has a really good game this week and then next week he's like 6,700, 7K, then yeah, maybe we could back off. But while he's still, under 6K, only 5,900, that's too cheap for Jalen Hurts if the guy's going to be running the ball as much as he did last week, which I would assume, not much changes here. So really like Jalen Hurts. And then Trubisky, I mentioned as well last week, only 5,500. Like, Mitchell Trubisky's been pretty good the last few starts, really since taking over the starting job. 21, 14, 24 Draftkings points. Trubisky still has somewhat of a low floor. Like, he can go out there and put up 13 to 15 points any week, but he's shown somewhat of a ceiling. 267 yards and 3 touchdowns last week. Good matchup here against the Vikings, a Vikings defense that has really struggled this year, has been one that I've looked to pick on. I like Trubisky as a cheap option as well. He was really, really low owned last week, and I think that's going to be the case once again this week. I don't know why, but the sites just haven't been quick enough to adjust his price. Like, he should definitely be more expensive than he is, especially with how well he's played, how good he's been for fantasy these last few weeks. If I can find the salary, I would much rather play a guy like Jalen Hurts, but Trubisky, 5,500, definitely in play as a cheap option. But that's kind of where I'm looking to, just kind of the 3 or 4 guys I've really keyed in on at quarterback this week. Now, let's go ahead and move on to the running back position. So I said it last week in my video that it seems like whenever I play Derrick Henry, he sucks, and then when I don't play him, he goes out there and smashes. I didn't have much exposure to Henry last week. I only had him in 20% of my lineups, which was definitely under the field. He came in, I believe, about 35% owned. I was underweight on Henry last week, and he obviously smashed against the Jaguars. I think he finished with like 40 Draftkings points. Yeah, 39.2 DK points, 215 rushing yards on 26 carries, 2 touchdowns, also got 2 catches for 7 yards. Had a monster game last week, and I didn't play much of him. It's hard for me to get away from him, though, this week. I know the price tag is way up there. I mean, he's $9,500, which is a lot to pay for Derrick Henry, especially given the guy doesn't get much usage in the passing game. Like that's just the one flaw in Derrick Henry's game. Like, if they would use him more in the passing game, he would be a guy that I would probably play a ton, way more than I normally do, or way more than I really have. It's always a worry, if the Titans get down like they did against Cleveland. Like, Derrick Henry's not going to play as much. He's not going to be involved as much, and that was the case in that Cleveland game. They got down big. Henry wasn't on the field nearly as much as we see him on the field. They didn't throw to him really at all when they were passing. In pass-heavy game scripts, like, Derrick Henry's definitely going to be a guy we want to avoid, but this shouldn't be a pass-heavy game script. This should be a run-heavy game script all the way. against the Lions. I mean, the Lions have been terrible against the run this season, god-awful, one of the worst teams defensively against the run. And like I said, we should expect the Titans to be running the ball a ton. They're 11-point home favorites right now. Pretty high total in this game, 51.5 total. I mean, you couldn't draw up a better spot for Derrick Henry. It's just the price tag's kind of hefty, but we're going to have some value this week. It looks like there is going to be some value opening up as the week goes on. There's already been some guys that have been placed on the COVID list that is going to bring some value into play. So I'll be paying up for Derrick Henry this week. It's a fantastic matchup. Because I do that, he's probably going to go out there and suck. It seems like whenever I play this dude, he doesn't do anything, but that's just your warning, I guess. I'm playing Derrick Henry, so you should probably avoid him, but the matchup's too good for me to get away from him. It's just the price tag is so high, but we had the value to fit him in. So Derrick Henry, my favorite pay-up option at running back. He should run all over this Lions team. Such a good matchup here, so really like him at the top. Dalvin Cook, probably just more of like a tournament play, kind of like a pivot guy. I don't know if I'd have a lot of exposure to Cook. It is a tough matchup against the Bears. I would much rather get to Henry if I can. But, in the 7K range, guys like Jonathan Taylor, I like in tournaments against Houston. I mean, Houston's run defense has been just as bad as the Lions. Really good spot for Jonathan Taylor, and he's kind of, come on the last few weeks, been much, much better, getting way more volume, which is something we like to see. Have interest in Taylor. David Montgomery, I have interest in as well. He's just been playing so well, getting the volume too, and against the Vikings, a matchup that I do like, definitely have interest in David Montgomery. But then, like in the 6K range, I mean, Cam Akers, if he's going to continue to get the work that he saw last week, if they're going to give him 25, 30 carries against the Jets for 6,600, I definitely have interest in Cam Akers. I just, we don't know if they're going to give him the carries. I mean, it seems like he's earned this number one role for the Rams. It seems like he's going to be their workhorse guy rest of the season, but you never know with Sean McVay. He could always involve Darrell Henderson. He could always involve Malcolm Brown. Like those two guys are still waiting behind Akers to take touches away. But Akers has looked so good the last few weeks. It would seem weird to not give him the work right now. It seems like he's kind of, earned that workhorse role. Finally, it took till week 14, but I think we got Cam Akers now as finally a workhorse back. Should get a ton of carries. Should be their goal line back. Gets a little bit of usage in the passing game as well. At 6,600, I have interest in Cam Akers in that mid-range. DeAndre Swift, I think in tournaments makes a lot of interest, I have a lot of interest in against the Titans. Really good matchup. Titans have been so bad defensively this year. Swift didn't get a ton of volume last week in his first game back from the concussion protocol, but still, he was somewhat efficient, was able to score 15 DK points, 7 carries for 24 yards, 4 catches for 26 yards. Did have a rushing touchdown. I know that Kerryon Johnson scored a goal line touchdown, so, I guess Swift could have had a better game if he would have got that touchdown over Kerryon Johnson. It's always a concern because, Kerryon Johnson, Adrian Peterson, those two guys are still involved behind Swift, but, if Swift's going to get 15, 20 touches, which I don't know if is the case, but, we saw him do that against Washington, got 16 against Minnesota. Like, if they're going to give him 15, 20 touches like they were earlier before he did get hurt, he would be a great play against the Titans for only 6,400. So he's a guy that I would have interest in that 6K range. But one of the big kind of injuries, random like pop-ups that we got throughout the week was Ronald Jones popped up on the COVID list Wednesday. Highly unlikely that he plays this week. This will be something to monitor. Like I said, I'm recording this video on Wednesday night, so we'll have to monitor this throughout the week and heading up to Sunday. Assuming that Ronald Jones does not play, he was already dealing with the pinky injury. Now they put him on the COVID list. I assumed they would activate Leonard Fournette and that Fournette would be probably one of the better value plays on the slate. Fournette was a healthy scratch last week, which was one of the big surprises. We got word, around 11:30 on Sunday morning that Fournette was going to be inactive. He was not going to play, which made me a lot more interested in Ronald Jones. Well, they've already come out and said that Fournette will start if Ronald Jones is unavailable. So if Jones is out, which I'm assuming is going to be the case, Leonard Fournette in a starting role at home on the road against the Falcons, but really good game environment. I think Fournette's going to be one of the better value plays on the slate. 4,500 on DK, also really cheap on Yahoo, only $12 over there. We've seen Fournette, not be very efficient this year. Like he's had some times. Against the Raiders, only averaged 4.5 yards a carry, which isn't bad, but, against the Giants, he got 15 carries, only averaged 3.5 yards a carry. Against Denver, 7 carries, only averaged 2.1 yards per carry. Like, really, the only good game he's had this year was against Carolina when he had 103 yards and 2 touchdowns. But the volume should be there. It doesn't seem like they really want to play Keyshawn Vaughn or LaShawn McCoy much. I assume Fournette gets a workhorse type role, probably sees close to 20 touches, gonna get usage in the passing game as well. We know they'll involve Fournette in the passing game. If Ronald Jones is out, I assume Fournette will be popular, but it's going to be really hard to get away from him. He's going to project as one of the best value plays on the slate, really on both sides and just kind of everywhere because he's so cheap across the industry. I know the Falcons have been good against the run this year, but like I said earlier, this is one of the better game environments of the week. 50.5 total in a dome. Bucks are favored by 6. You really couldn't ask for a better spot for Leonard Fournette, so I do like him a lot as a value play, assuming that Ronald Jones is indeed out, which looks like is going to be the case. But yeah, let's go ahead and move on to wide receiver. We'll talk about some guys I like here. So at the top, we don't have Devontae Adams on this slate. They play on Saturday. The Packers play Saturday. So Tyreek Hill is our most expensive receiver. He's $8,800. Tough to kind of go there like in the main lineup, in an optimal cash game lineup. Like I don't think I would play Tyreek Hill in cash games. In tournaments though, if you want to stack him up with Patrick Mahomes, by all means go ahead. I don't know if that's something or a stack that I'm going to have a ton of exposure to this week. I think there's other ways that I'd rather go at receiver. But, Tyreek Hill, at this point, he's become like matchup proof. The guy just seems to go out there and crush it every week. Very similar to Devontae Adams. Like, Hill's getting massive volume as well. You could definitely go there if you're paying up. It doesn't look like Julio Jones is going to play, so Calvin Ridley could be a good option. But, they priced him up to $8,200. Like, a lot of these receivers we've been playing lately have been priced up a ton. DeAndre Hopkins, I think, is the one guy that stands out to me, only $7,900. I like him a lot here against the Eagles. I'm not worried at all about this Eagles secondary slowing down a guy like DeAndre Hopkins. I think they're dealing with some injuries as well, so they could have some guys out in their secondary come Sunday, which would, just make me even more confident in DeAndre Hopkins. We've already talked about how I like Jalen Hurts, and I'm looking to play Hurts this week. So as a run back option in my Hurts lineups, I like playing Hopkins from the Arizona side. Been much better the last few weeks. He had that stretch where he was kind of underperforming against Seattle, against New England. Well, last 2 games against the Rams and the Giants, 19, 25 DraftKings points, had over 100 yards last week, 9 catches for 136 yards. Like, this is still one of the highest upside receivers in the league. Kyler Murray's been playing much better recently. Seems like his shoulder injury is kind of a thing in the past. That's something we shouldn't really be worried about. If Hopkins, if he's going to continue to get his 10 to 12 targets, which should be the case this week, against the Eagles secondary that I'm not too worried about. I do like DeAndre Hopkins a lot, especially because, I have interest in Jalen Hurts, and, Hopkins makes for a good run back in my Hurts lineups. But other guys in the 7K range, like if you're looking to play Trubisky, I think stacking him up with Allen Robinson makes plenty of sense. If you want to play Taysom Hill and you want to stack him with somebody, which you don't really have to, but, Michael Thomas, 7,200, you could look to stack him up with Taysom Hill. In the 6K range, though, Terry McLaurin is a guy that I do like a lot here against Seattle. Seattle's secondary has been one I've picked on all year. Pretty sure they have allowed the most DK points to opposing wide receivers this season. Seattle's just been terrible against the pass. They've been better lately, but still, I like the spot for Terry McLaurin. I'm expecting him to bounce back in a big way this week. He's been pretty bad the last 2 games against Pittsburgh and against San Fran. Just 3 and 4 DraftKings points, but now he gets a very favorable matchup against Seattle. Another game where you expect Washington to be playing from behind, to be throwing a ton. Right now I think they're 5.5 or 6.5 point home underdogs. Yeah, 5.5 point dogs. Should be playing from behind, should be throwing a ton. We got word that Alex Smith may be questionable, may not play this week. If Alex Smith were to be out, I wouldn't really worry about that too much with Terry McLaurin, because if Dwayne Haskins starts, Haskins, we saw earlier in the year when Haskins was starting, like he was targeting Terry McLaurin a ton. Honestly, it might be a better thing for Haskins to start than Alex Smith. So either way, I do like Terry McLaurin a lot in that 6K range at 6,600. He's one of my favorite plays in the 6K range. And also Brandon Ayuk, a guy that I like a lot as well. Between McLaurin or Ayuk, I think given the savings, I do lean Ayuk right now, but both guys are very strong plays. Ayuk 6,300 on DK, coming in, I believe, at $24 on Yahoo. Look, the guy's just been getting a ton of volume recently. No Deebo Samuel, who is expected to be out this week, and we'll have to keep an eye on the status of George Kittle. I believe they did designate him to return from the injured reserve, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to play this week. We'll have to keep an eye on that. Assuming Kittle remains out, and with Deebo Samuel out, Brandon Ayuk should be the number 1 pass catcher for this 49ers team on Sunday, and it's a great matchup against the Cowboys. A Cowboys secondary that has just been, terrible this year. Hasn't been one I'd look to really shy away from. Definitely like picking on the Cowboys defense. And with Ayuk getting double-digit targets in 3 of his last 4 games, and with no Deebo Samuel, potentially no George Kittle, Like, the target should continue to be there for Ayuk. This is a very explosive receiver, a guy that has a lot of upside. I know the price tag's getting up there. I mean, he's $6,300. Saw nearly $1,000 price jump, but he's just playing so well. The volume is there. He's clearly the number one pass catcher for the 49ers right now with all their injuries that they're dealing with. So I like Brandon Ayuk a lot. I think he's one of my favorite guys overall in the 6K range. Him and Terry McLaurin, I like a ton in that mid-range. But, scrolling down, looking for some other guys. Marquise Brown was put on the COVID list on Wednesday. They did come out and say that, if he tests negative 5 days from now, or if he tests negative like 5 days in a row, that he can play on Sunday. So if Marquise Brown does play, I do like him at 5,600 against Jacksonville. If you want to stack him with Lamar Jackson, I think you could definitely look to do that. But T.Y. Hilton is someone I like a lot in this 5K range, 5,500 on DK. Also very affordable on Yahoo, coming in at $19 over there. So T.Y. Hilton is someone that I don't think I've played at all this season. Like, he's just been so bad this year. But he's really come on the last 3 weeks against Tennessee, Houston, and the Raiders. 18, 28, and 25 DraftKings points in his last 3 games. He scored a touchdown in 3 straight. Now he gets to face Houston once again. Faced Houston in Week 13, had a great game against them. 8 catches for 110 yards and a touchdown on 11 targets. Like, if you look at his numbers against Houston, like, I don't know why it is, but it seems like T.Y. Hilton just crushes every time he faces the Texans. He did it a ton last year whenever he played Houston. He's done it so far this year in the one game they played. And with T.Y. Hilton seemingly, kind of back right now, I mean, we don't know if he's back, but the guy's been playing well. He's been getting the volume. It's a good game environment, high total game in a dome where we know T.Y. Hilton plays better. He's always had better home splits. He's always been much better at home in the dome. For only 5,500 against the same Houston team that he just smashed against, I do like T.Y. Hilton quite a bit in that 5K range. I don't know if I'll be stacking him up with Phillip Rivers just because, Phillip Rivers doesn't have a ton of upside, but if you want to play T.Y. Hilton as a one-off, or if you want to stack up, Deshaun Watson with one of his receivers, T.Y. Hilton could definitely be a good run back option into your Deshaun Watson stacks, but I'm more likely to use him as a one-off this week. Like him quite a bit at 5,500. I think he is definitely underpriced, especially for how well he's been playing. And, another good spot this week against Houston, a team that he just seems to crush against, every year. It seems like his numbers against Houston are just so good. Should have pulled him up, but I know last year he had some big games against them, and the year beforehand, he's done well against Houston once again this year. But yeah, looking for value at receiver. If we're going below 5K, there's definitely some cheap options I am interested in this week. If Marquise Brown does not return from the COVID list, if he's out, then Willie Snead at 4,300 could be viable. Christian Kirk at 4,300 could also be viable as maybe a run back option in your Jalen Hurts lineups. But I do want to talk about Kendrick Bourne. So Kendrick Bourne's only 4,100. With Deebo Samuel out, I am expecting Kendrick Bourne to be the number 2 receiver for the 49ers. And last week, he was second on the team in targets, only behind Brandon Ayuk. Deebo Samuel did get hurt very early on in that game against Washington, and Bourne pretty much was an every down receiver once Deebo Samuel got injured. If we're going to get Bourne playing 85-90% of the snaps like he did last week for only 4,100 in that same good matchup against Dallas, I do like Kendrick Bourne quite a bit as a cheap option. 4,100, especially with Brandon Ayuk probably getting a good amount of ownership this week. Ayuk, I think, is going to be somewhat popular. Kendrick Bourne could make for a really good leverage play off of Ayuk if he does wind up popular. So I do like Bourne as a value for 4,100. And then I want to mention Lynn Bowden Jr., 3,600. Another team dealing with injuries is the Dolphins. So far, it doesn't look like Mike Gesicki's going to play this week. Jakeem Grant's also been dealing with an injury. So has Devontae Parker. So there is a chance that Devontae Parker, Jakeem Grant, and Mike Gesicki are all going to be out for the Dolphins, which would put a guy like Lynn Bowden Jr. into play as a value. Last week he got 9 targets, 7 catches for 82 yards. Also got a rushing temp, and I think he threw a couple passes as well. Like, this is a very athletic receiver, a guy that has a lot of speed. Definitely a guy that shouldn't be priced at 3,600 given all the injuries to this Dolphins receiving core right now. Most likely, the most likely scenario is that Grant and Gesicki are out and that Devontae Parker plays, but we really don't know as of Wednesday night. This is going to be something we need to monitor heading up to lock on Sunday. So Parker was a limited participant in Wednesday's practice. Jakeem Grant, I believe, did not practice, or he was a limited participant as well. And then Mike Gesicki, I think he was the one that did not practice. Yeah, Gesicki did not practice, so I would say Gesicki is kind of trending towards doubtful, whereas Jakeem Grant and Parker are questionable. If one of Parker or Grant wound up out, if one of those two guys wound up out, I do like Lynn Bowden Jr. as a value play for 3,600. But let's go ahead and move on to tight end real quick. We'll hit on tight end before we do end the video. So obviously at the top of the position, you can pay up for Travis Kelce. By all means, go ahead. He's 8K. He's expensive, but the dude's just been so good this year. I'm pretty sure he's leaving. I think I saw that he's leading the league in receiving yards, and he's a freaking tight end. I mean, he's just been playing out of his mind this season. I would expect the Chiefs to continue to feed him the ball. They want him to probably get that record, I'm sure. So if you can pay for Travis Kelce, he's clearly the best tight end on the slate. I just don't know if I can pay 8K for my tight end. This is normally usually a position I like to go cheap at. So looking for some cheaper options like Logan Thomas at 4K. I do like against Seattle. Logan Thomas was someone that I played a lot at the beginning of the year, and then I kind of quit playing him. And then lastly, or at least like the last few weeks, I mean, he's come on, been really good. 9 targets, 7 targets, 24, 10 Draftkings points, 13 DK points against Dallas. Against Seattle, like I said earlier, a game where you expect Washington to be playing from behind, forced to throw a lot. At 4K, I think Logan Thomas is a tight end value play I'll be looking to. Dallas Goedert as well, I do like at 3,900. If you want to stack him up with Jalen Hurts, you could definitely look to do that. Last week with Hurts at quarterback, Goddard did get 6 targets, 4 catches, 43 yards. Was still pretty heavily involved, even with Zach Ertz back. I know Zach Ertz has returned, or I believe that was Zach Ertz's second game since returning, but Dallas Goedert is still clearly the number 1 tight end for the Eagles. Should be the guy that sees the most volume. I would say most weeks he's going to probably lead the team in targets. I think he did have like a 20% target share. I believe Hurts threw the ball. I think he threw the ball 30 times last week. I can't exactly remember, but I know Goddard's target share was 20% last week, which did lead the team. So I do like Goddard once again for 3,900. You could definitely look there. Him and Thomas I like for value. And then lastly, I talked about Cole Kmet last week, and he had a solid game. He wasn't great, but he did have 4 catches for 41 yards on 7 targets, 8 Draftkings points. He's only 3K this week. As a cheap punt tight end, definitely have interest in Cole Kmet. Seems like he's the number 1 tight end for the Bears right now. I know Jimmy Graham scored a touchdown last week, but Kmet has been out-targeting Jimmy Graham. He's been playing more snaps than Jimmy Graham as well. For only 3K, as a cheap punt option, probably going to see 6 to 7 targets. Has a chance to score a touchdown. I mean, you're going to want him to score TD. He's probably going to have to pay off his price tag, but this is a position I usually like to save salary at, and Cole Kmet is a value play, a cheap guy that I'll definitely be looking to. So Cole Kmet, Dallas Goedert, Logan Thomas, obviously Kelce at the top. Those are probably the guys I'm really looking to at tight end this week. Mark Andrews, I don't mind either, especially if Marquise Brown does not play. Mark Andrews will become a much more appealing option. George Kittle, if he plays, 5,300 for Kittle. He'd be a great play, but we just don't have that news as of Wednesday night. That'll be something, we have to monitor throughout the week. But yeah, guys, I think we covered tight end, broke it all down, quarterback through tight end, hit on this main slate, position by position. So I hope you guys did enjoy the video. I do appreciate you watching. If you enjoyed this breakdown, be sure to hit that like button before you do get out of here. Hit the subscribe button as well. Be sure to click the notification bell so that way you do get notified every time I upload. And if you have not yet, if you want to check out my Patreon exclusive content, that is linked down below in the description. If that is something that does interest you, I do provide a lot of additional content over on Patreon, so be sure to check that out, link down below. But best of luck on this slate, guys. Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed, hope you win some money, and we will see you in the next one. Good luck, guys. Peace.